When my son was 5 years old, he was almost the perfect little boy. Always did what he was asked, and was great company to be around. His world at the time was filled with baseball, his toys, and imagination. He could disappear into the world of his little room for hours at a time. Sometimes I go in and check to see if he was okay. He always was. He could lose himself in his own private world of little cars and trucks and building blocks and just a million things to do and think about. But there was only one problem, and it was in his closet. My son had an imaginary friend, which I suppose is pretty normal at that age. The trouble was, he didn't really like his imaginary friend that much. My son's imaginary friend allegedly wasn't a nice guy. I first became aware of this reality overhearing him seemingly talking to someone in his room, and I stuck my head in and asked, "Hey kid, who are you talking to?" And he looked up from his blue and gray girders and panels construction set with this little frown darkening his brow, and he replied, "Frank Meyers." "Who?" I inquired. "Frank Meyers. He lives in my closet." Now I could tell by the frustration in his voice he didn't want to discuss this any further, so I just remarked, "Oh, I see," and let it go at that. Got to admit, however, I was still curious from time to time, and I would inquire how or what Frank Meyers was doing. Couldn't get much out of him. He shrugged non-committally and said, "He's okay, I guess." I remember one time my son replied that Frank Meyers was in his closet breaking all his toys. Now that bothered me. Years went by and we moved out of the little brown house, and my boy grew up into young adulthood. And one day he was out in the yard helping me do something, and I asked, "Hey kid, whatever happened to Frank Meyers?" He didn't so much as flinch. He simply replied, "Oh, that loser." "Really?" I remarked. "You know, you never told me about your make-believe friend." My kid smirked. "I always knew he wasn't real, you know." I was fascinated. He continued, "Frank Meyers was a composite of all those characters that used to haunt that back room of yours years ago when I was little. I used to be up half the night listening to you guys back there, talking and laughing and arguing and drinking beer and listening to music. He was this smart-ass prick from New York with red hair, or this loudmouth drunk who knew everything except why he was still living with his old college buddies. Some nights he was a moody folk singer, always telling you off. Other nights, there was this guy with a really deep, scary laugh. Most of the time I could hear all their voices, but I could never hear yours. And sometimes I wondered if you were there at all, or the voices had replaced you." "Really?" I was astounded by all this. "Well," I said, "how did he come to live in your closet?" "Well, he said he got thrown out of the apartment he shared with his pal, the Lucky Ward and Hot Horse. And he showed up one day in my room looking all depressed and abandoned and asked if he could live in my closet. So I felt sorry for him and I said yes." Sensing the end of the conversation, I could see he still didn't care to elaborate on this further, and I wasn't sure if I wanted him to. I gave him an out. "Well then," I asked, "whatever happened to Frank Meyers?" "Oh, I left him there in the closet when we moved out." And then Kid gave me a strange little smile and added, "I think."